In today's episode of the Longevity Wellness Podcast, I sit down with a legend, a sage, a master of the human body, Paul Chek. This episode was very, very inspiring. In fact, he even got me emotional at one point. I couldn't believe it. He is a sage of wisdom. This man has mastered the art of understanding psychology and physiology. He referenced so many philosophical pioneers and trailblazers long before all of us. We discussed wellness, biohacking, longevity, purpose, psychology, spirituality, religions. We discussed hormones. We discussed the state of our environment, humanity, society. It was arguably one of my favorite episodes and favorite conversations I've ever had with any human being. He's that much of a level guy. In fact, I don't know how long this episode is going to be, but we originally decided we were going to just shoot a podcast for 45 minutes. We went for 2.5 hours. So this episode, although it's probably going to be condensed, there's definitely going to be an opportunity for you to see the extended version on the back end in a little while later. But right now, I want you to have an open mind and an open heart, because you're going to be moved and you're going to learn a lot from the man himself, the sage, the living legend, Paul Chek. Most people think their hormones are the problem, but the truth is, it's the data. That's why I've aligned myself with the Dutch test. This is a company that provides you with an at-home test sent right to your home, and you can measure your hormones. What kind of hormones? Estradiol, testosterone, progesterone, cortisol, cortisone, the ability to metabolize your cortisol throughout the span of 24 hours. This information provides you with data so that you can maneuver and make ongoing changes based on your hormones. Typically, when you go to the doctor's office and you get a blood requisition, that's only a single snapshot, and they're not able to provide you with the data that you need in order to move forward. So again, that's why I use the Dutch test to measure your hormones so that you can move forward with the appropriate data. You have arguably positioned yourself as one of the living legends and leaders and authorities on biomechanics in the world. And you've really changed the map of how some, not all, individuals pursue their recovery and performance and everything in between. What started that? Why were you so compelled to change the way athletics looks at the body?
Well, first of all, I'm an athlete, and I've always been an athlete, and I'm always interested in, how can I get a competitive edge? But when I became a therapist, my leading question was, what caused that? And so, without a long ado, I just kept seeing that what was happening wasn't working for people, and I don't like not doing a good job. I have a desire to do the best I can do at everything I do. So as I spent more and more time studying anatomy, physiology, kinesiology, biomechanics, and all the related sciences, I saw that there was a complete and utter mismatch between how the body actually worked and what people were doing. And I'm like, why are people doing this? It's not backed by science. It's not backed by anatomy, physiology, neuroscience, biomechanics, kinesiology. And so I also had a leading question that, as I did 5 cadaver dissections in my earlier career. I've been doing this for 42 years, so it's, I've had a lot of time to study a lot of things. And as I was dissecting bodies, I kept saying, okay, why does the vastus medialis come in at a 72-degree angle? That's, why that? Why is the rhomboids at a specific angle? Why, for example, are the thoracic extensors right across a curve which means they have to hold you up against gravity, but they have a predominance of fast twitch muscle, but all the other stabilizers of the spine have predominance of slow twitch muscle. And so I thought, God, why would the body be built this way? And so then I said, let me look into what it took for us to survive in nature. That was like because there's a concept called the selective pressures of nature. A beaver has teeth the way it does and a flat tail the way it does because the environment that it's in and the function that it has in nature requires these tools. So I looked into what were the selective pressures of nature that shaped a human being. And I spent years looking at this, and then when I met Penny, she's got a master's degree in biological anthropology from Cambridge, so I would propose these concepts I would have, and then she would give it to me from her perspective, from an educated anthropologist, right, with a deep understanding of anthropology. So it gave me a chance to start talking to somebody that had a different perspective and different training than me. But a long story made short, what I did was I asked myself, what movements did we have to do to survive in nature without which we would probably die? And so one of the ways I went about it, and by the way, I figured this out by 1988, which was the same year I introduced the Swiss ball to the exercise industry. It was around in aerobics classes, but it wasn't being used for anything effective. So I pioneered the whole use of the Swiss ball as a conditioning tool with a science behind it, which I did by, I owned a physical therapy clinic and I have a long background in hardcore rehab. So I started writing down every single exercise I could think of. And I had pen boards all over the place and blackboards and charts. And then I asked the question, what does this movement depend upon movement-wise for it to happen? Okay? So for example, if you say, what does it take to throw a ball? Well, one, you have to lunge. Second, you have to twist. And third, you have to do a pushing movement. A push is a forward movement. So I said, okay, look, here's an exercise that has 3 different patterns in it. Which of those are fundamental? Well, if you can't twist your spine, you can't walk. If you can't walk in nature, you're dead. You can't run, you can't sprint, you're dead. You can't swim, you can't throw, you can't push, you can't pull. Nobody in nature is doing barbell stuff or Smith machine garbage. Everything's dynamic and usually single-handed and single-legged. You're always using things independently. And so there is an example. I say, okay, here's an exercise that we all do from the childhood up, throwing a ball, that requires these 3 patterns. So what would happen if you couldn't do the lunge, but you had to throw the ball? You'd have to compensate. So having worked with countless elite level baseball players and having rehabbed the shoulders of professional pitchers and things like that, I found that anytime one of these fundamental patterns wasn't working, the body had to compensate, which almost always led to an injury, because when the compensatory stress reaches a threshold, you go into decompensation, which means something breaks down. And if it doesn't completely break down, then what happens is you go into a deeper compensation pattern. And typically what happens is you go from pain on the original side, so a right-handed pitcher who, I'll give you a quick example. I had a pitcher from the Yankees, I believe, sent to me. This is probably 92, 93. He had 2 shoulder surgeries, but he couldn't get out of pain, and they couldn't get him back to playing, and he couldn't perform. So word through the grapevine, they said, well, this guy figures people like that out. When I tested him in the throw pattern, I noticed he could not step across his trailing leg, his stance leg. And so I could see that what he was doing to compensate was he was accelerating his trunk really fast, unusually fast, which was causing the shoulder to be used like a whip. So it was taking the rotator cuff and stretching it into a massive eccentric load. And then he would couple the flexion of the abdominal muscles with the explosive rotation of the arm, but that was tearing his rotator cuff up.
Paul, really quick, as a pitcher, can you just break down what was that restriction again with his leg not being able to cross the...
Well, I'm getting there.
Okay.
So what I did is I had to then analyze all of his joints to see what was and wasn't working. And what I found out is he had what's called turf toe, which is common to football players and sometimes soccer players, where the big toe joint gets so damaged it becomes arthritic. For a person to walk normally, you have to be able to dorsiflex your big toe 60 degrees. So, for example, if I had you just standing there and said, lift your big toe up, if you couldn't get that big toe up to 60 degrees and I could grab it and give it a little help, then I know that you're going to have a mechanical problem in the system because you cannot step across your foot properly. Well, he had 0 degrees of dorsiflexion, 0. And he had this huge arthritic toe joint. And so what I realized is that he could not use the power of his whole leg. You generate force from the ground up when you throw a ball. He could not do that because he could not step across his leg. So he had to compensate by accelerating his trunk, creating an eccentric load on his rotator cuff, which was tearing his rotator cuff up. When you throw that much, and this is a guy that throw a ball 95 to 100 miles an hour, right? So what I did is I tested him, and the way I tested him I had him in my gym, is I took a rebounder and I gave him, I believe, a 1-pound medicine ball. And I said, and I got him 30 feet from the rebounder and said, okay, throw the ball like you would throw a pitch at the rebounder. And he threw it, and it hit it and bounced off. But I was watching his body and I could see he wasn't moving properly. So once I measured him up and saw what was going on, I said, okay, I'm going to create a pitcher's mound for you out of an Airex exercise mat. And I'm going to fold it up so it's soft so that when you step on it and put pressure on your foot, your toe sinks into the mat, which would create the illusion of dorsiflexion to your kinetic chain. I gave that to him, set him up. He threw that ball so friggin' hard, it literally bounced off the rebounder and went through the fucking roof. It broke through the ceiling. And he did not throw it any harder than he did the first time. And he looked at me and he goes, what the hell just happened? I said, you just got your leg back. And he said, my shoulder didn't hurt when I did that. I said, because you're not overusing your shoulder. And so the point is, you see, what I did was I took countless exercises and said, okay, what's most fundamental to do this, and what's secondary and what's tertiary, what's additional?
Sure.
A lunge is primary when you throw a ball because you generate force from the ground up. The twist is secondary, and the arm is the final. So think of cracking a whip. Your leg would be the handle, your torso would be the body of the whip, and your hand would be the tail of the whip that cracks. But if you reverse the thing so that the tail is wagging the dog, you get a lot of problems, right?
Yeah.
So after I spent a couple of years breaking all these exercises down, I finally came down to 7 patterns. There are 7 fundamental patterns, which I call primal patterns: squatting, lunging, bending, pushing, pulling, twisting, and gait. And gait has 3 neurological derivations. So walking, jogging, and sprinting, they all have separate motor control programs. As a side note, I saw, because therapists were lazy and undereducated, you could get a marathon runner, for example, or a sprinter that had a specific pain, like a patella tendon problem or an Achilles problem or a groin problem, and they would come in and therapists kept testing them walking. But you can't do that because the pattern of movement is completely different at these 3 different speeds. You have to actually go out and have them run at the speed that the problem's occurring and analyze their gait. And this is where high-speed video became useful in my career at later stages because they didn't really have a lot of that available when I began.
Sure.
Now something wild happened to me, which was like one of the most interesting moments of my life as a therapist. In the year 2000, I went to the Czech Republic. I was accepted into an advanced training program for elite physical therapists, chiropractors, osteopaths, and physiatrists, which are doctors of rehabilitation, in the Czech Republic, put on by Vladimir Janda, one of the world's primary researchers in rehabilitation, human movement, and everything to do with it, and his teacher, Carol Levitt, who is just as famous, if not more famous. Carol Levitt wrote the book Manipulative Therapy and the Rehabilitation of the Locomotor System. And these guys were the only doctors and experts in the world I'd ever seen that actually paid attention to anything to do with the internal organs and their relationship to the musculoskeletal system. They were the only ones anywhere in the literature other than Francis Marion Pottinger, MD, that I could find. And so when I was in this training program, there's a doctor that came from the Charles Hospital in the Czech Republic called Vojta, Dr. Vojta, who did 50 years of research on infant development, how the infant grows and developed a whole system of rehabilitation called Vojta therapy. And as part of our week of training, we got to work with a Vojta therapist. And the subject that they had for my group, they brought us into pairs, there was like 35 of us, and they put us into two. And the lady that we got to work with had been in a head-on car accident and had been in a coma for 3 months. And she was literally still not able to move. So they brought her in a wheelchair. And then we picked her up and put her on a mat on the floor. And the Vojta therapist simply began touching key points on her body. And she was laying on her back, and her arms and legs started to move like a cat or a dog. And she looked shocked. She was looking like she didn't know what was going on. Now, we had to have a translator because she didn't speak English. And I said to the translator, ask her what she's feeling right now. And the woman said back to me, it's as though something's moving inside of me. I don't know how it's happening. And I said to the Vojta therapist, why is that happening? She said, Dr. Vojta identified these reflex points that if touched in the right sequence, which was he identified by watching how infants moved all by themselves, and he found that there are reflex points that connect through the central nervous system and integrate the brain and the motor system and the glands and the organs, and the whole system is integrated, but it needs these pressure points. And so the analogy I give my students is these pressure points are like keys on a piano keyboard, and if you play them in the right sequence, they activate programs that integrate the whole body. And so I was so fascinated by this, I ended up buying about 30 or more books on infant development from all around the world and studying very intensely. Studied Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen's book, Wisdom of the Body Moving by Linda Hartley, and many others. I have them all in my library. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at this, and in Linda Hartley's book, Wisdom of the Body Moving, she actually shows many charts and diagrams, shows how the entire psychophysical development of the child is fundamentally integrated through infant development. And if these children don't have normal infant development, which is really common because parents don't know what they're supposed to be doing, they have hard floors, and long story, but it's like there's, in fact, I've never tested a single professional athlete that had normal infant development. And this is why they were going to rehab after rehab after rehab, and nobody was ever they were just getting rid of the pain. But I've had athletes that have had 5 surgeries on the same joint because they keep treating the symptom as though it's the problem. So I'm looking at these books. Let me finish.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, I got hit by a fucking bolt of lightning. I went, son of a bitch, look at this. The same 7 patterns that I'd identified in 1988 were exactly the patterns the infant goes through. It begins in the womb with twisting because it's the most complicated pattern for the biomechanics of the spine, but it hasn't had any work hardening for the connective tissues, the ligaments, or cartilage, so it has to begin in a fluid environment. That's why the kid's twisting around in a leg and a hand here all the time.
Okay.
Then it gets on its stomach and it picks its head up, and that's how the spinal curves develop, and it picks its head up, activates the stabilizer muscles, because the stabilizer muscles are not differentiated. Your muscles are undifferentiated until you start getting loaded by gravity. So it pushes itself up. Then it gets on its hands and knees and it pushes and pulls. Then it starts to learn to crawl like a reptile. Then it begins to do lunges and pull itself up to standing, and then squat and stand up and lunge and squat. So and all of that ends at 10 to 12 months later in gait, and I saw, oh my God, the infant is actually developing the same exact patterns, and I figured it out backwards. I went from the adult living in nature to say, okay, there's fundamental movements going on here, and if we as therapists, strength coaches, trainers don't understand these movements and don't know how to train them properly, then the body has to compensate, and that's going to lead to injury, or it's going to lead to, the other thing is it creates a survival reflex alarm in the system, because the innate knowledge of the body knows if I can't squat, I can't shit normally, I can't cook, I can't get on and off the ground. I mean, you got to think like a caveman or like a developmental man, and you'd see that what happens at a root level, at the brainstem level, it triggers fear in the body, and that brings adrenaline up and cortisol up, which alters your breathing rate, which alters your CO2 oxygen ratios in your blood, which leads to a lot of mental emotional problems like anxiousness and nervousness, and on it goes. So the moment I figured that out, it was like, oh my God. I realized that I'm not stupid. I figured something out no one had ever figured out in the whole world. And so when I then started coupling infant development with primal pattern work, what it did is I had been doing all this work. In fact, I got into an argument with Yonda and Levitt because they were showing cases, and they said nobody can do this kind of rehabilitation without infant development. And I raised my hand and I said, you're wrong. I do it all the time using Swiss balls, balance boards, and a variety of other apparatus. And Yonda, I had been Yonda's student for years. I took every course he ever gave, and he knew me very well because he said I asked the toughest questions. He responded back. He said, Paul, somebody with your skill that knows how to use those tools properly can do it, but that's extremely rare. Anybody else without infant development training is probably just going to grovel around and make a mess of the client. And what I also figured out is that when I learned infant development, I had actually figured infant development out by analyzing what my patients needed, how to isolate muscles that weren't working, and then use Swiss balls, foam rollers, rocker boards, wobble boards, and a whole, I used to have a whole arsenal of different apparatus for different things. And so the point is that once I learned and understood and mastered infant development, and I took the primal pattern movement system, which I used to screen professional sports teams, college teams, all sorts of elite athletes, Olympic teams, and I found problems left, right, and center, but now I had a very clear, concise system of infant development. And the beautiful thing about infant development is those reflexes never go away. I can do infant development on a 95-year-old and it'll work as good as it will on a 6-month baby, because those reflexes never shut down. They're always there to help the body integrate itself. And so that's one of the things that Czech professionals have as a huge advantage, because they not only know how to assess the primal patterns, which the infant should have mastered to be able to get to gait, but they can also assess the infant development, which breaks it down into the developmental steps that shows you, as sure as I got a bald head and you do, why that person can't do those exercises. Now, that's just the surface level of it, because to really get deep, where I take all Czech professionals by the time they graduate, is I show you how every single organ is connected to movement, every gland is connected to movement, then I show you how the mental, emotional relationships affect movement. And in my infant development training, I did something that no one else did. I showed you the psychological correlations to each of the primal patterns, which nobody had ever done before. So I can not only tell why you can't move properly, but I can ask you what questions need to be asked. For example, if you can't rotate your neck or your spine, you do not have the ability to survey your environment, and it's going to create primal fear in you. And oftentimes, for example, I found these problems crop up when somebody has a relationship with a person, place, or thing that they're unwilling to look at.
I was just going to say, where are they not able to look?
Or usually it's unwilling to look at.
Right.
For example, if you're married and you have an insecure feeling that your spouse is having an extramarital affair, cheating on you, but you don't want to actually know because you're afraid of what will happen if you find out, the psychological threat to observation often shows up clinically as a neck or a spine that won't rotate. And doctors and therapists keep treating it as a physical problem.
Sure.
And if you have a thyroid or a parathyroid problem, that has direct problems. A lung problem goes right into the neck. The liver can go all the way up into the shoulder and neck on the right side, the stomach on the left side. The heart can go into the neck region. So I developed a system that carefully analyzes all your glands, all your organs, and does probably one of the most comprehensive psychological analysis and pain history and trauma history analysis in the world. So by the time someone graduates from the Czech Institute, they know how to look at you at every level and make the correlations, and then know what exercises, what dietary change, and what mental, emotional healing needs to be done, what therapists or doctors or experts you need to go see to put the puzzle together. So really the thing that I tell people about the body is that the body never lies. You can't really rely, like a lot of times people, most of the time, when I'm asking them what's going on, they don't even know that what they're telling me isn't actually what's going on, because the ego is too afraid to look into themselves. They have a lot of shadow material that is also filtering. But fortunately for me, God gave me some skills such as clairvoyance, clairaudience, and clairsentience, and intuitive knowing, so I can look right at a person's chakra system and see what's happening while they're talking. I can look at their energy field.
Have you always had that, or has that been a learned, developed trait? And I still have some more questions that I want to not forget about.
Mm-hmm. That's okay. I always had inner vision. My mother became a yogi when I was 12 and joined the Self-Realization Fellowship. And right away, when my mother and I were meditating, I would begin having visions. And she would ask me, "Did you see anything?" And when I would tell her what I was seeing, she was like, "Oh my God, people don't normally see that till after years of meditation. I wonder how that's happening to you, because it's not happening to me yet." But when I work with Master Fong Ha and begin doing a series of committed gongs in Tai Chi, it's like all hell broke loose, and all these voyances just turned on like crazy. And I've also conducted and done approximately 1,000 or more plant medicine ceremonies. So I did 18 years of daily Tai Chi. I meditated for years, but when you coupled the plant medicines with the meditation and the Tai Chi, the plant medicines helped me find all the blockages, all the trauma, and all the things that were getting between me and God, metaphorically, between me and the truth of everything that I wanted to look into. And the Tai Chi calmed me and centered me enough that my mind became like a mirror inside. and then I could be present with a person, and because I'm not caught in any religious dogma or whatever, if they're having anal sex or had killed somebody or whatever, I didn't have a blockage to seeing that, and I wasn't going to judge them. So, countless people have come to me that nobody could figure out, and I've even had some of the best therapists in the world working for me that I trained who'd have people they couldn't figure out in 5 minutes. I just connect to their soul and say what's really going on and get right to it, often with a lot of tears and trembling. But the thing is if you're really here to help people and you get all your own biases and dogmas and crap out of the way, then metaphorically, Great Spirit shows you what you need to see to help it, because there's nothing here but God. That's a side note, is people keep looking for God. That's the biggest joke there is. God thinks that's hilarious.
Amazing. I'm going to go back to, I'm going to try to integrate two questions into
Hit me,
one,
baby.
with what you were discussing. So initially,
I didn't mean to not let you ask me questions. It's just that if you don't have the pieces,
I know,
to see the puzzle, then you make assumptions and you don't really ever learn what I'm saying. And then people say, Paul said this. And I'm like, no, I didn't say that. You don't even get it.
Right.
So sorry.
It's okay. Purely for a survival perspective, as humans evolved, and you said that through as we evolve, of course, we have adaptive evolutionary events that challenge us, and then of course make us grow and evolve and adapt.
Yeah,
that's where we are today, and certainly, and that's where I was going to ask him, like, well, hold on, what stipulates not having proper movement as an infant? But then you answered that. But at the same time, does our current state of 2026, is that going to challenge that theory, because infants are not moving the way that we are supposed to, or the way that we have over the years of evolution?
Well, let me ask you a question. If you take a fish out of the water and try to raise it in flour, how long will it last, and is it a fish anymore?
It's a deep fried London fish. Of course, it doesn't.
It's going to die.
Right.
And so the point that I'm making is, when you know what I know from a lifetime of study about the human body, and you look around or you even walk into a gym, one of the first things I had professional sports teams do is get rid of all the bodybuilding equipment. This is killing your athletes. They can't move. They got a bunch of muscle that's functionally useless, and on it went. And it would shock the hell out of them, and I'd prove it to them. One of the ways I proved it to them is I outlifted all their athletes. I said, you choose the lift, and I hammered them. And I said, now I'm a therapist, and I'm beating your professional athletes. So you guys are glad that I'm a therapist, because if I wanted your job, I'd take your job and your wife. I just say that to wind them up. But it was, when I was young, I was quite fiery, and I was strong enough to back it up. The reality of it is, look, we're eating so far away from our needs.
Yep.
We're so poisoned. We're so falsely educated. There's an old saying, it takes a tribe to raise a child. We've got more single mothers and broken families in the world than ever in the history of man. So we've got a complete tribal social breakdown. If you study the chakra system, the function of the root chakra, remember the chakra system is a psychophysical system of integration. It's how the psyche integrates with the body and how the body talks to the psyche. The root chakra, which sits right down between your legs, and the energy comes out between your rectum and your testicles, and it shows up, it expresses any excess energy through the sciatic, the lower lump L5S1, and through the whole sciatic distribution, the whole legs. That system psychologically is asking, am I safe? Who is my people? Who's my tribe? So safety, security, tribal association and wanting to belong. Who do I belong to as a people? Anytime there is a security threat to whether you're safe, you feel secure in your relationships and in yourself, you don't know who your tribe is, look at all the family trauma and all the sexual abuse. You start studying that and you go, oh my God, we're in big trouble. So safety, security, tribal association, wanting to belong, then what you see as the side effect of that is not only the psychological and physiological breakdown, but you see, for example, chronic low back pain, chronic sciatic pain, legs that don't work properly in movement. You see colon problems because it's linked to the colon. You see bladder problems. You see pelvic floor dysfunction. I mean, these things are rampant out there. So the point that I'm making is if you can only take a human being so far from because we are the environment. This is why biopsychosocial medicine was actually such a big step up for the medical community, because they finally realized that the biological being that they normally treat with drugs is actually a psychological being and a social being. So we are in a full-on interface with our environment. Everything you eat, drink, smell, breathe is what makes your cells constantly. You're replacing 2 million blood cells a second. You got 100 trillion cells in a man that's 6 feet tall or 5'11" or so has got 100 trillion cells, and they're turning over every year. So we're like a water fountain that looks like it's still, but if you ever go to a park with a big water fountain and you get far enough away, it looks like a tree of ice. But as you get closer, you realize it's moving. So the psyche holds the image of itself, and the cells keep rebuilding the image.
Oh, I love that.
So, yeah, that's really what's going on. This is why when someone has a psychological trauma, for example.
Yeah, of course. It's going to change the way they're built.
Well, it imprints the water. The water updates itself 1 trillion times a second and has an infinite capacity for memory. So if you keep repressing anger or insecurity or fear because you were traumatized and you can't psychologically understand it and make meaning out of it, it creates an imprint, and the physical body actually starts to build a physical structure that matches the energetic imprint, and one of the most common names for that is cancer.
Yeah. Paul, I think, I'm sure maybe you've heard this, but I think you're putting Dr. Sarno's work, you make his text look like elementary books.
Well, I remember when that book first came out, it was a step in the right direction. But it was just, it was a step in the right direction, but it was, what I would say is...
like you're covering so much more.
He's just touching the surface of it. And it helped a lot of people, that approach.
Right.
Because it was moving in the right direction, right? But it was just too shallow. Look, the human being is a very complicated creature. You know, once you put a cortex on top of that limbic system and a prefrontal cortex, all hell broke loose, you know?
Well, yeah, you got the amygdala and you got the medial prefrontal cortex. That's still a little bit of a conundrum, isn't it? Still?
Well, yeah. Well, the thing is that we have, what it gave us, which is really dangerous, is it gave us the ability to override and ignore our instincts. No bear ever lights its home on fire. You know.
Okay.
Animals don't poison their water. They don't get chemicals to get rid of weeds without going for a long laundry list. I mean, once you give somebody enough computing power to distract them from what's important for survival and how to stay in harmony with nature, what you get is computers and AI and kids that can't move but can build robots. You know?
So then this brings me back to that original question. How
and make sure you're feeding them real food, educating them with real education, and teaching them how to solve problems and learning how to think instead of being programmed as to what to think. The deeper you go into the computer game, the more your brain becomes the property of big tech organizations and the less of you there is left. So we're right on the edge of a massive divide. Humanity's going to split. You're going to have the Elon Musk camp and the Ray Kurzweil, and if you read Reality Plus by Paul Chalmers, David Chalmers, he's now so drunk on computers and all that stuff. If you read Rizwan Verk's simulation hypothesis, you can see people are becoming the technology. Rizwan Verk's convinced that we're all living in a simulation. Why? Because he's a fucking professional video game maker. So the whole world's a video game. But yeah, that's the answer. We're at a very dangerous and critical divide, and a lot of people are going to disappear. They are right now.
Well,
COVID was a test run.
Yeah, and I guess at the end of the day, it's just going to boil down to how long it's going to take. But it is purely just survival of the fittest, and that brings it back.
It's not going to take long. Right. Have you ever read the book Pottinger's Cats? It's time. Pottinger did a 9 or 10 year study with, I think, 900 cats. He broke them into two groups. He fed one their natural diet of raw meat and raw milk, and he fed the other ones, that's all he did, was cooked meat and pasteurized milk, and he gave them different grades of pasteurized milk. By the third generation, the cooked meat eaters and pasteurized milk drinkers had tremendous problems with birth defects and miscarriages. They lost their sexual differentiation. The females started having sex with males, males started having sex with males. They lost their athletic ability, and for the first time you could throw a cat in the air and it wouldn't land on its feet, it would land on its head. So they said, let's see how long it'll take to get them back to where they started from, and it took 4 generations of rebreeding on raw meat and raw milk to get them back to where they, approximately where they started. And then he shows pictures at the end of the book in almost like around 1950, I think, if I remember. It might be right in there. But it's pretty wild. He took pictures of teenagers that were naked facing a wall with their arms out in front of large audiences of medical doctors and asked them to tell them if that was a male or a female. And most of the doctors could not tell. And he showed that we were feminizing the males so badly by processed food. And this is way before we had the 68,000 plus food additives in our food we do now, most of which are toxic. Okay, so he showed that was happening in the late 40s and early 50s to human beings. He said, look at the correlation between what's happened to my cats and what's happening right in front of us. And most doctors were completely oblivious to it until he pointed it out to them. And the book's only about 100 pages. You can read it in a few hours, but get ready to have your mind blown, because now you'll never see human beings the same again, and you will be very careful about what you put into your mouth.
I've got an academic joke. I just thought about it. I wonder if you'll get it or not. So this doctor with all the cats, do you know if he provided the cats to the authors of Wisdom of the Body? Do you know that book?
Wisdom of the Body.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Who's the author? Wisdom of the Body Moving is Linda Hartley. That's the book I told you about.
Cannon, Dr. Walter Cannon. They're the ones that...
Oh, yeah, I've got that book in my library, and I've skimmed through it years and years ago. That's an older book.
It is. Well, it's just they basically go from inception, from birth all the way to end, and they just talk about how the body's continuously trying to maintain homeostasis through all sorts of different mechanisms, right?
Yeah.
But many of the studies that they observed were through cats. So I'm just wondering, maybe this applies to the cats.
Pottinger probably kicked off the awareness of what was really going on for any doctor that had more than 2 brain cells holding hands, which is a problem. I mean, there are good doctors, but they're very hard to find. I'm blessed to know several of them because I've met so many of them and have the way I know if they're any good is because they understand what I'm doing. the more they argue and fight with me and tell me I'm wrong, the more I realize they don't know what the hell they're talking about, you know. And I've been on debate panels all over the world with the doctors with all sorts of fancy degrees and destroyed every one of them every time, and enjoyed the hell out of it too. Not that don't get me wrong, I don't have anything against doctors. They're just people, but a lot of them are completely and utterly brainwashed because the medical system's an indoctrination system like all religious systems are.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Let's, you know, we're having such a candid conversation. I'm really enjoying this. If I'm going to go back,
baby.
If I'm going to
the
go
deeper
back,
the question, the better.
well, one of my mentors, are you familiar with Dr. John DeMartini?
Yes.
So
yeah.
he says,
I don't know him personally, but he's been around a long time.
Yeah, he says the quality of your life is based on the quality of questions that you ask. And so,
hey, that's right, exactly. Yeah. And the wiser you get, the bigger the questions and the longer it takes to answer them.
Which that goes, you know what? I'm going to go right to the last question then.
Do whatever you want.
The pursuit of happiness, and a little bit of it being a facade almost, because when one is in the pursuit of happiness and the continuous pursuit of getting better, is there ever a time when one can achieve a moment of happiness from that, or are they going to continuously be in the pursuit of betterment, and that in and of itself is kind of maybe suffering?
Well, I think you have to make a key differentiation. Our use of the word happiness is a sugar-coated falsity. Most people think happiness means I got everything I wanted today, I ate as much sugar as I wanted, I got enough money to continue to destroy myself, and I'm on the right drugs and I feel good, or whatever their story is. But really, happiness in its authentic sense is a sort of a synonym with well-being. So to me, a person that's happy is one who is willing to engage the realities of their life regardless of what's going on. They have enough passion for life, enough reserves, and enough awareness of reality to engage reality. You know, the Buddha said the only universal law that's worth really paying attention to is a law of impermanence. Most people are happy when they think everything's going to be the same for them every day, and that they're always going to be young, and that they're always going to be beautiful, and that they're always going to have the money or the toys that they need to create the illusion that they can not deal with the thing called reality, right?
Sure.
And most people are very confused about what reality is. So I'll tell you what reality is, because in my library, I got about 15 books of scientists and philosophers and smart people with lots of degrees debating what reality is, and nobody really has ever come up with a good definition, so I took it upon myself. So here's 3 things that reality is that people need to understand, or you'll never know what happiness really is. Reality is what's happening right now. No one can escape that. Reality is everything it takes to keep you alive. If you don't have food, you're in trouble. If you don't have water, you're in trouble. If you don't have warmth and shelter, you're in trouble. If you cannot breathe, you're in trouble. So all your instincts are designed to engage reality. So reality is everything it takes to keep you alive. You might want to consider that with what's going on in the world and the state we're in right now. Okay? Finally, reality is everything that's happening whether you're looking or not. Right now, the globalists are up to some nasty shit, and whether you're living in a farm in the middle of nowhere and don't have social media, shit's happening that's going to affect you, and it is, because those chemtrails are affecting you no matter where you live, even if you live in the most remote place in the world. I could go there right now and test the water in your area and show you what's in it, and it's coming right out of the chemtrails, okay? So reality is what's happening even if you're not looking.
Reality is happening even if you're not looking. Got it. Yeah.
Reality is what is happening even if you're not looking.
Got it.
When you're not looking at night, the moon's still there. if there's a solar flare at night and lights the world on fire, that's reality. Because even though you're not looking, it's happening. Okay? At night when you're sound asleep and all these AI and tech corporations are figuring out how to steal everything you got and passing laws to take away your freedom, that's reality whether you're looking or not. Okay? So if your idea of happiness does not help you engage reality, then it's a sugar-coated illusion. So when people ask me about happiness questions like this, it's almost always the sugar-coated illusion. It's not real happiness. Real happiness is the ability to engage the realities of life and turn challenges into opportunities and turn pain and even trauma into meaning. Because if you can't convert pain and trauma into meaning, spirit stops flowing, and that's the beginning of a slow march or sometimes a fast march to the end. And you saw that during COVID when the suicide rate shot through the roof because people could not make meaning out of what was happening to them because they weren't prepared to engage that much reality or that much change or impermanence. So happiness is having a big enough dream in your life that your heart buys into to give you the levity to overcome the gravity of the social and cultural circumstances that you live in. And if you're not eating adequately, you know, I have 4 doctors, Dr. Happiness, which means you have to have a clear sense of what your values are and know what's happy making for you and do it. Dr. Movement, if you're not moving your body enough to keep it healthy and at least deal with the realities of gravity, and if you're not eating nutritious food that's right for your body plan and you're not getting enough rest and taking time for introspection to come to know yourself as something other than your mind, you're not ready to deal with reality. You're in a survival state. Okay, so happiness is the ability to engage reality and make meaning of the process.
I want to thank you so much for your time. And
hey, thank you. Yeah.
I have a new burden to consume even more of your teachings and pass them on to my community.
Yeah, well, enjoy. Yeah, my Spirit Gym program's loaded. Yeah. You know, it's the magnum opus of my life's teaching. So
yeah.
I've written a 15-volume book set. We're getting ready to release volume 1. I put 5 years of hard work. When COVID hit, I said, okay, I got to give this to the world. I can't wait any longer. I've been doing research on it for 10 years. So I worked day and night for 5 years to write over 3,500 pages of what's now 15 volumes. And then I built the Spirit Gym online training program and took a synthesis of all 15 volumes and put it into a 75-lesson, 80-something hour format. I do weekly sanghas where people get together. I give them mini lessons and I give them, you know, my guidance as a therapist or a life coach. And we grow together as a community. We work on these exact things together with the intention of trying to raise consciousness in the world and really get out of 3rd grade together. Amazing. So that's myspiritgym.com. Right, I think you, of all people, would dig that because
yes.
You've got the depth and the processing power to actually really see what it is that I've put in there and see the logic and the rationale behind it, and it's loaded with practical techniques for healing. And it's a lot. It's you know, some of my students have now been in there for going on 2 years, and they're still deeply engaged in the lessons.
I bet. Yeah. I bet. I thank you so much for this. Now, I don't know if you know this, but I'm the founder of Longevity Wellness Expo. It's Canada's largest biohacking and longevity event. We're in our 4th year. I'm going to have to talk to your team and see maybe, I don't know. I know you don't travel that much anymore.
Yeah, I have no desire to travel. I'm traveled out.
I would, well, I'm just saying we would love to maybe have some entity of yourself or maybe some of your representatives, and we can maybe have a collaboration where we can get some educators to teach your teachings.
No problem. Where are you at? Where is it at?
In Toronto in October.
Oh, you're right in the hotbed. I've got the girl that runs my Spirit Gym program with my chief person, who's a super sharp, skilled Czech professional. So is her husband.
Okay.
She was the world champion ninja warrior on television. She's a world-class athlete. She lives in Toronto, so they immigrated to Toronto.
Okay.
Matt Nickel, do you know who Matt Nickel is?
I'd have to check. Maybe I might.
Matt Nickel, for 12 years, he was a Toronto Maple Leafs strength coach. He's the most successful strength coach in all of Canada. He trains more professional athletes than anybody.
Okay.
He's got a center right there in Toronto. He's a Czech professional.
Okay.
There's
So
a
we'll make
bunch
it
of
happen
them.
then. Yeah.
Yeah, I can hook you up with, the Toronto crew is a badass group of people.
Well, yeah.
You're surrounded by some of my best people. Janice
Okay.
Marshall, amazing. There's a bunch of them.
Canadians are asking two questions right now. How do I feel better and how do I live longer? Your search has led you here. 3 days with speakers who've changed lives, vendors with tools that actually work, and real people asking the same questions that you are. Proudly Canadian, the best minds in health, all in one place. And you're invited. Longevity Wellness Expo, Toronto, October 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, the theater at the Great Canadian Casino Resort, Toronto.
Did you know that your hormones influence your gut health just as much as your gut health affects your hormones? Women often experience digestive challenges, whether it's bloating before your period, constipation during pregnancy, or gut discomfort during menopause. Our gut and brain are in constant communication. Women experience more digestive challenges than men, and research is starting to explain why. The good news? There are ways to support gut balance and hormonal health. Want to know exactly what's happening inside your gut? Microbiome testing can give you a personalized insight to help optimize your gut health and immunity. You don't have to guess what's going on inside your body. Gut Check Vivo, tailored for women, backed by science.
If you're looking for a gluten-free porridge or oatmeal alternative, I've got you covered. This is Grindstone Blends. It is a Canadian company and they make cream of rice. Me coming from a bodybuilding athletic background, I love cream of rice. It's a great fuel source for my pre-workouts, playing hockey. It's great as a clean carb, and it's definitely not oatmeal, and there's no gluten in it. What I also really like about it, they've got different flavors. It's very, very clean. A lot of times when people are consuming cream of rice cereals, they're very high in iron, where Grindstone Blends have taken care of that. Now, I just want to take a little moment to read a letter that the founder shared. Dear Brennan, first and foremost, thank you. For the past couple of years, you've continued to invite Grindstone to be part of the Longevity Expo. Although we weren't in a position to participate at the time, your continued support and belief in what we're building have meant a great deal to us. They're finally attending the expo this year. They're going to be there on Sunday, one day only. And what's so special about this company is, amongst many, many things, these products here, this is cup of cake. And they are found in the Ronald McDonald House. So for families who have children that are sick and they're in a hospital setting, family members are looking for healthy foods to eat just to give them some substance, and they have taken it upon themselves to make a healthier alternative. And so they're really looking after families and individuals who are gluten sensitive, celiac, and that's why I like Grindstone Blends so much. You're gonna see them at the expo on Sunday. Get yourself a ticket and you'll be able to try all of these amazing flavors of cream of rice cereal. My favorite. See you at the show.
Are you a professional in the health and wellness space? Maybe you are a clinic owner, a practitioner, a natural healer, or you're in charge of purchasing products, or you're a distributor. And your business is built all around biohacking and longevity or wellness or even precision health. Friday, October the 2nd, Longevity Wellness Expo is designed specifically for you. This is going to be our professionals and practitioners event. It's a private B2B evening exclusive to the industry before the doors open to the general public. You're going to get a chance to meet clinic owners, founders, innovators, and health leaders from across the country. Additionally, you're going to get a sneak peek at all of the vendors before the crowds arrive. You're going to see the latest in all of the health products and hear 3 business-focused keynote presentations specifically designed for practitioners and wellness entrepreneurs to grow your business. We're excited because this is where partnerships begin and distribution deals can happen. Your ticket also includes full access to the weekend for the whole expo. Friday night runs from 5 p.m. until 9 p.m. at the theater at the Great Canadian Toronto. This is your personal invitation to shape the future of health in Canada. And that wraps up another episode on the Longevity Wellness Podcast. Wow, what an episode. Mr. Paul Chek, you are an absolute sage of wisdom. I am so grateful that we got to spend some time with you today. A lot of time, in fact, a lot of time. And I'm absolutely certain that if you stuck around for this whole episode, it moved some emotional strings for you as it did for me. Also, a big thank you and shout out to our sponsors. This podcast would not be possible without you. So when you see these products, just know that I personally use them, and you're going to see them at the expo. That's right. The expo, it's coming October 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in Toronto, Canada's largest and biggest biohacking expo of its kind, the 4th annual. We're growing, getting bigger and bigger. We'll see you on the next episode.